if you're going to go see Stephen, Pastor Stephen. He's amazing. If you have not seen him or heard of him, he's a fantastic young, spiky, funny, amazing. Pushes the envelope.
Oh, no wonder I see so many young people at the church already.
You want to pray?
Go ahead.
Father God, we just thank you, Father, for this church, Father. We thank you for this body that has went before us all, and it has blessed us to be in a place like this today, Father. We thank you, Father, that the words we speak, Father, that we're a vessel for you, and that what we speak, Father, is pleasing to you, that you will bless each and every marriage that's here and still on their way, and people watching, Father, that all of us know that none of us are perfect, but we know that when you look at us, you designed us and created us for a perfect image of you, Father. We thank you. We love you. We ask that you bless us. Bless these words. Bless Pastor Stephen today as he comes to visit, that you'll bless his church and you'll bless him 100 times what he's pouring into us. In Jesus' name, amen.
So can you put the light? So I found this little clip from Stephen Furtick, and it's on purpose. The name of the chapter is Naked Purpose that we're discussing today. So I'm going to play about 2.5 minutes of this, and I want you to glean some really interesting things about purpose.
Because a big decision is not necessarily what city you're going to live in. That's a big one, I get it. But a bigger decision for us was, what church are we going to go to? Because out of the church that we attended,
we're going to do this the right way.
Today I want to share with you in this part 2 on the subject of pivotal decisions. Pivotal decisions. I'm going to Judges 13. I don't know if I'll get there in the next few minutes. So if you don't know where Judges is in the Bible, you're going to have a good head start. If you prefer to just look at the screen, that's okay too. But I wonder, as I get started, how many of you right now are in the middle of making a big decision for your life? Would you raise your hand if you're in the middle of making a big decision for your life? And keep it up. Keep it up. So what are you going to do? How are you going to do like pros and cons, or you're going to like flip a coin if it comes to that? You got a plan for this? You're gonna do like ask a lot of people till somebody tells you what you want to hear, like we all do, you know? Just keep asking people till you get the answer that you wanted, so they can confirm the thing that you were gonna do all along anyway. Now you wasted everybody's time just asking them stuff that you already knew what you were gonna do. What are you gonna do? You're gonna like just stress eat and put it off to the last minute? That's always a good plan. I like that. I like to just watch Netflix instead, personally. Put it off to the last minute, and then make the decision when the pressure's on. You know, the crazy thing is, when I say that, a big decision, a lot of the decisions that you make, you don't know if they're big or not when you're making them. That's why I need God so much, because not only can I not make the big decisions right without Him, but I don't even know which ones are big unless He tells me.
And keep that in context of marriage.
You know, big decisions. We get caught up. Where are we going to get married? That's me and Holly spent so many weeks thinking about that. Like the big decision of where we were going to have our wedding. You know what? It didn't really matter as much as some other things. What was important about our marriage was like, how are we going to resolve conflict? Y'all don't want to talk to me today. Well, we're singing so good, and then I started preaching and y'all went to sleep. And the big decisions, you know, is
so.
Did you do that from your watch?
Yeah.
Wow, you're just so techy. That was impressive. Does that make you feel good when I tell you you're amazing?
I love it. I love it. I love it.
That's a win. That's our class. That's our class.
And we're done.
Make your husband feel good and tell him good things.
So this is I love this class. And the more that you come to this class, you begin to realize, a lot like when you come to Lakewood Church, that it seems like every now and then Pastor Joel is speaking right to you. It's like, I needed to hear that. I needed to be fed. I needed to have somebody understand what I was thinking and feeling and going through. And this class has very, very similar traits in the simple fact that as we're part of the audience and we've got other people that share and that they share their testimony, I get fed.
Yes.
And I become a better person. And I also get challenged because I allow myself to be challenged. And I really enjoy this book a lot because number one, it has one of my most favorite words, which is naked. And because it is about
my reason I love this book because it says marriage.
um, and I've allowed myself in this class and through numbers of books and talking with people and sharing with people and sharing their stories and hearing what they're going through, I've allowed myself to become more vulnerable. And for me, that's really a major thing, a major breakthrough, which I know God is working with me on that, one step at a time, one open door at a time, one relationship at a time, friendship, I should say,
one
friendship
at a time.
Yeah, sometimes many conflicts, but
because what a lot of you guys know Jeff and I, and this is our second and last marriage, and we work really hard to stay in flow or to stay connected, and we don't always do it perfect.
To do what we actually talk about up here
yes.
in the
yes,
class,
absolutely.
to actually do it.
And we'll always tell you, we are not perfect. We don't have a perfect marriage. We have a great marriage that we continue to strive and to continue to teach Jeff how to be better. So what we do is we really take to practice what we say. What is so amazing though, when you start to read chapters and you start to dig in, you feel like that chapter, like what he said, is really made for you. And when they spoke last week, I'm like, God, you are so good that chapter is a lot of what they taught us. And this chapter started off this book. If you it's called The Naked Marriage. Naked Marriage. And the chapter we're teaching on is chapter 9, Naked Purpose. And one thing that really
not being naked on purpose, but naked purpose.
Naked purpose. Exactly. And so I love the beginning of this chapter. When I started to read it, and Jeff and I read separately, or I listen to on Audible, then I go back and look at the book, and I just go back and forth. We're different, right? We're completely different, and I'm sure in your marriage, you guys are completely different. God gives us what I don't have so that I can be blessed with what Jeff has.
And that's good.
Yes.
And that's good.
And God gave me what I needed and what I was going to be able to share with Jeff and be his helper and
even
bless
though sometimes
him.
I don't want.
And bless him, because by doing that together, you're really not supposed to be fighting.
Transparent. That's complete transparency.
With that, we become one whole person with God being in the center.
Exactly like the relationship that God designed us to have with his son Jesus Christ, just as the relationship that Christ has with the church, the body of his people. That's the miracle of marriage. That's the true miracle of marriage. Is it's a perfect school. It's a learning place of how to grow in our relationship and understand how we truly should have our relationship with God.
So the chapter starts off with Dave talking and describing a situation when he was in college that they were being a little mischievous and they were going to a rival school and they were going into an area to be able to accomplish something that they wanted to do. And they stumbled across a room that was very dark, and he said he couldn't see, and he flipped the light switch on. And I'm going to read to you what he's seen in the room. He says, from floor to ceiling, from wall to wall, the room was fully packed of hundreds and hundreds of years of worth of trophies. There were trophies for music, academics, football, baseball, what is that, John? Philanthropical, and everything else you can imagine. These awards had been awards for years that this school had received, and all of them, he starts to describe how some of them were broken, how some of them were large, some of them were small, but this entire room was filled with awards of what this school has accomplished. And he said it's amazing what happens in our life that all of us want an award, and all of us want to receive something for something we do well and we do good. But over time, like he was looking at this room, they meant nothing to a lot of people and they didn't want to throw them away, but they kept them stored there. And after all this time, they were just collecting dust and they were broken. And I thought about my life and I thought about the position Jeff and I are in, and we're in sales. And is there anyone else in sales? Anyone else in sales? That so every single time you sell something or you win even back in your school days, if you did something really well, you got an award, right? I mean, your kids get awards, you get awards, and it makes you feel good. And I thought sometimes we get so busy and we put ourselves in our children and our marriages and our business ahead of everything so we could get this award or win this recognition from whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. And we get so busy that the enemy comes in and says, you've allowed me in because you got tired, you got weak, you got snappy, you put that before your marriage or before your children. And I thought of that chapter because we are in sales. We have received a lot.
Basis of terms, yes.
Yes, and the basis of terms. And I thought, all of us, and that's not what God tells us to do. God tells us to love and be there and be kind and be loving.
Be purposeful.
And be purposeful.
Be
and
fruitful.
Yes, and we are transitioning and we've been talking about us taking a different position, making a big decision. And what we have to be very careful about in our marriage and our ministry and in our family is that when we take on too much, we get so busy that we forget what is really important. And
Very
that and when we do that, the enemy can't hurt us because we're God's children, but he can sure mess with our minds. And when we get tired and weak, we allow him to come in because we get so distracted. Sometimes he says, I'm going to keep you so busy because I know when you're busy, you are going to be snappy, you're going to be angry, you're going to be rude, you're going to be short. And that's not who I see husbands giving wives elbows back and forth. But the real truth is, it's us. I talked to my best friend yesterday, and I was asking her what she was going to do. And she's like, "Oh, Abby has baseball, and then tomorrow she has softball, and then she has dance, and she's 8 years old." And I said, "Wow!" I said, "Because society has told us that we need to be afraid if we're not involved in all these things because we could possibly not win."
And to touch upon what Michelle's talking about, specific to the focus of this chapter, is what are your trophies? What are your trophies that you're gathering that eventually are going to gather dust in a dark room? And are those fruitful? Are those fruitful to your time, the limited time that we have here on this earth?
It could be, golf clubs. It could be video games. It could be, hobbies or cars or whatever else. I remember a situation. Let me share this. I know I'm going off subject early on.
It's situational. We share and they learn. Okay.
So Jeff's downtime is he saves the world. He goes into this world where he is playing this game. I don't even know what the game's called. And he's been playing it for a long time. And when we were first dating, I never noticed that Jeff played a game. Never played a game when he hung out with me. He never pulled his phone out, never played a game. He never pulled out his laptop and never played a game. So when we got married, he started playing his game again. And time went on, and he's an amazing husband. And we started to get comfortable in our roles and our position, and we would coming home and laying on the couch. And I used to have a regular routine that I used to record The Young and the Restless. Does anybody know who The Young and the Restless is? And I used to watch it since I was a little girl, and I would watch novelas. Yeah. I like Spanish novelas because at least they end. Young and the Restless has been going on since I was born, and it's still on.
And so, still going through the same.
And Jeff despises that kind of things. I mean, despises it. So he would go off into his world, into his office, and he would play his game. And then I would watch my soap opera, and then we would come back together and just share the evening together. Well, as years went by, I stopped. He used to grab about my soap opera, and I finally prayed and said, God, I would never act like that. Let me give it up. I did. Fast forward. Gave it up. So I was wanting Jeff to give up his game. So that was never the plan, right? So guilt started to set in, and I was probably less than caring and patient when I was saying, like, I really want to spend time with you. And Jeff got one of these little tablets. And about 3 weeks I went by, and I said, "Gosh, I really just
And
want
I'm
to talk."
not playing my game. That is not my game.
I say, I really want to talk to you. I really want. I think of you guys. And Luis holding his eyes open, and I want to talk to you. I feel like we haven't spent time together. He's like, I have been with you every single day this week, and I'm like, you have?
Yes.
And he's like, yes, I've been every single day in this living room, Michelle. I've been laying on this couch right here. He starts to go on and on, loud, and I'm like, yeah. He goes, I even bought this for you, for me,
For you.
and because I was gonna play my game in the living room with you, so that I'm with you in the living room, and I'm like,
That's how the male mind works. It makes sense,
interesting.
right?
And I'm like, wow, wow, wow.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, wow. And so that was
And the point
is that we don't discuss things and say stuff. We think of a great plan, and he was trying to be kind and leave his office and spent some money and said, I'm gonna still save the world in my game and still enjoy my time, but I am gonna be in the same space with my wife.
It's funny you mentioned that because we have our media room or whatever upstairs, and that's where I have my PlayStation as well. I only play a soccer game, and I used to have it in the room, but she made me take it out of the room because when she would fall asleep, I would turn it on, but then I would smack the bed when I would be pissed.
when somebody scores.
When someone scores something, and so it would wake her up. So she says, "No, you gotta put it up there." So sometimes when I want to spend time with her, or she says, "Can we spend time?" Like, yeah, how about we go off? I'll play, and you watch me, and then we'll play, and maybe you can talk to me, and sometimes I'll answer whenever I can when I'm
Totally
playing.
makes sense.
Right?
Totally
Totally
makes
makes
sense.
Come on.
Totally
It's
makes
a
sense.
really good opportunity for words of affirmation.
There you
Baby,
go.
you're doing really
Well, so
good.
why don't
See?
you learn?
That
and then we
is
can
good.
spend
That's
some
what I'm
quality time
saying.
together.
Right, but
So-
maybe this
So he's words of affirmation. He's words of affirmation, and she's quality time. So they're having both love languages done. Baby, good job. What were you gonna say?
You know, it's just like the purpose. She loves watching General Hospital. And
There you go.
She watches in the living room, and I'm here in the bedroom, and then so I decided, you know what, but by the time she's finished watching it, she comes back. She's all tired and everything. So I said, let me go sit there with her and watch General Hospital with her, and it's like how dare you?
There you go, our
This is
General
my
Hospital
time.
space.
This is just for her.
See, and it's not that it's just for her. And his tablet wasn't just for him. What happened is he didn't explain what he was doing. Expectations.
Right.
The expectations of what he was doing. He was creating an act of kindness and a gesture of, you're just as important as my game, probably more. And but I'm going to kill two birds with one stone, and I am going to spend quality time with you and fulfill your desire, and I'm also going to save the world to fulfill my desire.
But see,
So,
that's where he's more physical touch.
uh-huh.
So for me, if you turn off the lights, I'm like a parrot. I'm out like a light. So he wants me to massage him. So I'm like, okay, well I gotta turn on the TV. So at least I can, there's some action going on.
I
so
just
can
had
get
back
away.
surgery, by the way.
So-
Okay, so.
Hey, we're all married in here. It's okay.
I have to massage him so it keeps me awake. I'm watching TV and he's like, pay attention. I said, but I'm doing this for you. I'm just trying to stay awake.
No, because she's falling asleep, and I'm like, it's okay, I'm done, I'm good.
And it's good, but we talked about it's about being intentional in many aspects, even if it's not our love language, as our goal is that we try to be as intentional as we can.
So to bring it back onto the topic,
Sorry.
I would love to hear, what do you all think is a fruitful marriage? What does a fruitful marriage look like? And I'd love to hear ideas of what a fruitful marriage looks like.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is you both participate in creating a safe place where you can
Love
truly
that.
be naked.
Wow.
That's my only issue about being naked.
Woo!
How
Love
naked
that.
can you really be and still be safe?
That's awesome. That's good. I love that. Anything else? What about you? It's Eric, right?
No, Keith.
Keith, I changed your name. Sorry, Keith. Sorry, Keith.
She's looking at me. That's not my name.
I was sure I was right.
I would say a fruitful marriage is where both people are being fulfilled in different, in ways that are meaningful to them. Because we talked about the different things that, maybe the soap opera is meaningful to you and the game's meaningful to you. And there's not really that connect there, but there has to be a bridge to where we're both having satisfaction in our marriage. And
I love that.
I think that's kind of what brings a lot of fruitfulness out of it.
Yes.
Because when you have that, then that parlays into
that.
Let me read to you what
Thank you.
what Dave and Ashley wrote in the book specific to that question. And I really love this, and this is why I'm really kind of trying to peel back the layers on this chapter. God has a masterful purpose for our marriages. Making your spouse happy is wonderful. But God wants us to move beyond this desire to an even greater purpose, being fruitful. Marriage is an amazing opportunity for husbands and wives to leave an eternal, and I'm going to say that again, eternal impact on those around them. Marriage is not about us. It's about us bringing God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. As we love one another and together love others through our actions, then the world is changed. And ultimately we are changed. And that it was like, boom, when I read it, it was, so now I understand what they're talking about naked purpose, especially with this chapter. And when we talk about what is a fruitful marriage, what does it look like to each one of us, I think that's a great conversation to have as husband and wife. What do you want to leave as our legacy? Please.
I love it. That was really good. It made me think with the whole naked word. What does naked mean?
Right.
It means
Yes.
that you don't have anything on.
Yes.
Which means you're not bringing anything else. It's just you two together.
Yes.
Try to leave things that don't matter and don't have God.
Yes.
That's a great way to look at it.
And I think that the biggest thing is all of us, even like I see my nieces and nephews because our children are bigger now, is we have been taught somewhere along the way, good or bad, parents trying to teach us, right from wrong, that we are to hold back some. And then we grow up, and then we get into a marriage, and we're like, you're supposed to share it all and lay it all on the thing. But all our life, we said, don't say that. Don't talk during church. Don't do this. Don't tell that kid that. Don't be honest. You're too honest. We tell kids, like, don't tell that kid that. We're constantly telling each other that we can't say those things because we're teaching them how to be proper adults. And we get into a marriage, and I want Jeff to be vulnerable with me and tell me all his hurts and his pain. Here's the really tricky part. When he shares all those with me, that
you don't make me look dumb, stupid. How could you let that happen? How could you? Yeah.
and the worst thing where I was going, because that's one bad pain, the worst thing I can do is go back to him and say, your ex-girlfriend told you the same thing. Your ex-wife told you
them.
when you use it against them. Because what that does, it pushes them really far away to never feel safe, like you said, to be vulnerable and naked with you ever again. So one thing we always say is that is a hurt pocket. We've had a book in the past, and we say I'm still growing from that. That part we should never ever throw at each other, because that's clarity, right? And those are pieces and places. Can you read that piece? That's wonderful what you just said.
In 1 second, I've got it highlighted to these questions. That's my organizational piece there. But so in A Naked Purpose, Dave writes in this chapter, because we're talking about what a fruitful, God says, go forth and be fruitful and multiply, of course. But fruitful is the first thing, not multiply. Fruitful is the first thing he says. And so Dave wrote that serving creates an antidote in serving others, serving in whatever position or whatever opportunity that may be. Could be in your job. You could be ministering to the people that you work with. But he writes that serving creates an antidote, and I love this, antidote to the toxicity of complacency in marriage. And when Michelle was watching her soaps, and I was out in the office saving the fake universe, something happened there. There was a void, a separation, and it went on for a little while. And if we ignored that and we didn't address it, and Michelle didn't say, "Hey, I'd love to spend some time with you," that complacency sneaks in. And that's dangerous in a marriage. Really, really dangerous. Because complacency and, I'll think of the other word, complacency is really, really dangerous. So, one of the things that we were blessed with, um, unfortunately, when Hurricane Harvey hit and affected so many people in Houston, we were blessed, and I say this in a very humble way, we were blessed to not be flooded. But the blessing, the true blessing, wasn't that we didn't deal with flooding. The blessing was we didn't have to deal with our house and all the stuff that goes with flooding, and we took that time to go help others. We literally served for at least a week and a half,
24 hours a day.
every single day.
Yeah. When the church opened, I mean, even to the point where I kind of had a bone spur because we walked the aisles when the people were staying here for days. And we don't say that being boastful for a pat on our back because that's not what it says.
What did it do for us?
What it did for us, as far as us,
What did it
me
do
and
for
you
us?
came
For our
together.
marriage.
Jeff and I came together in a place that we had never ever served to that level in that capacity.
And we met people that we never knew before. We got to speak life into them when they were hurting, that young couple,
Yeah.
the young married couple that were living on the street.
Yeah.
We got to go to people's houses and help muck it out, save them time, save them energy, let them know that they're not in it alone. That's fruitful in my eyes. Taking the opportunity to find things that we do together in our marriage, not for any other reason than to give. And that's one of the things that we do with our job that I love. I am always looking for the opportunity, as is Michelle, to make somebody's life better, to change somebody's life.
Here's the bigger piece. I love that you said that because it gave us an opportunity to be able to go out and serve God's people and through our marriage. But what happened is, if we take a step further go back a little further, when Harvey started to create all the news and buzz, we live in Katy. Pastor Clayton and Ashley live in Katy, really close to us. And I wanted to leave. We have been here for 10 years. We had never been through a major hurricane or storm like that. I watched my twin sister go through it for about 10 years, and I never understood why she wouldn't get up and leave. And I kept telling him, I want to leave. Our children are grown, and we're empty nesters. And I said, we have no business sitting here waiting for the storm. And I kept telling him, let's go, let's go, let's go. And they kept saying our area is going to be evacuated. And I went to him and he said, I prayed and God says we are not to leave. It makes me cry because I kept pushing him and saying, I don't want to stay. And so when I would call Pastor Clayton, he would say, and this is what we tell you about the class, you need to have good Christian friends. He kept saying, what is Jeff saying? What is Jeff saying? And I said, man, it was the big decision. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted Pastor Clayton to say what I wanted to say, and I'd say, go ahead, Michelle, you guys should leave. And if you get in the car and go, he will follow. He will go with you. And I had to be submissive to him. And so I went and prayed in my bathroom, and I said, God, what do you want me to do? He says, I want you to listen to your godly husband, and I want you not to be fearful. I didn't give you a spirit of fear. And when I went and told him, he said, there's a reason why we need to stay, and I'm not sure yet. But really, God needed me to be submissive to my husband, and he prayed like he's never prayed before.
I went outside into the hurricane and was praying at the hurricane and also praying at a lake that was filling. And I said, you shall not pass in the name of Jesus Christ. You shall not pass. And there was just some amazing stuff going on.
And there was someone playing Christian music,
which I loved,
yelling down the street saying, you will not flood this neighborhood. He's like, there's another Christian on the other side of that lake, Michelle. We're not alone. And it really was, if he would have listened to me, he would have never had that opportunity to pray and serve the way he did and go help God's people. Because we would have ran.
We would have been gone.
We would have ran. Like
That's
we
true.
run from our marriages because we don't want to face each other.
I didn't even think about that.
I remember hearing this story when Harvey happened and seeing Jeff, and that is amazing. And we've always talked about here during this class to be submissive to our husbands, or also to listen to spiritual wives and how much wives can also drive their husbands in. A lot of times
Did you
we
get
have
that on recording? Just kidding.
we have a lot of wives who have come up in class and said, "How can I get my husband to pray with me? How can I get them to interact?" But I think there's a fine line too when we say, um, Michelle, you got to be submissive to your husband.
Sure.
Because if your husband is in a godly place and he is praying, like you just said, he prayed like he never prayed before, then in that moment is okay. God gave him a revelation. Then I must listen to him. Then in that moment be submissive. But the problem is a lot of times in a machista world or anything is people may hear the same thing. Well, you guys told us, or the husbands who are not in a godly heart
Sure.
may leave class or may leave some other place. It's like, you see, you got to listen to whatever I say.
And that is perfect, Luis, because the true thing about being submissive is first being submissive to him. And then I get to be submissive to him. That's the grace we have. Now remember, I went in and prayed, and I prayed to him, and I said, if you want us to leave, you need to convince him to leave. And I said, because he's not listening to me.
And that is so perfect because that was part of my prayer, which I didn't really tell you about or talk a lot about it, is God guide me in my actions. I know that you will never place us in harm's way. If it is for us to go, put it on my heart to go. And this is while I'm out there in these winds and this rain, praying at this lake, listening to the Christian music across the lake. It was a surreal moment that I absolutely loved. Thank you for bringing that up.
And here's what we do, ladies, is, and I'll be the first to put myself on that place, is that I want to push against him. And it's okay to be a voice and a helper, but what we must do is we must humble ourselves first to God. Because if I wouldn't have done that, I would have kept telling him. And I had two strong women on the other side of the phone that were older sisters, and they kept saying, do not listen to him. You need to get in the car and come. And I was this close to listening to them instead of him. Not to be disrespectful, but we've grown up to listen to each other. In the Hispanic world, our brothers and sisters in our family, I know we've talked about that, we talk a lot. You white folks, you guys listen to your own minds. He's doing his own place.
And sometimes we talked about this a little bit in marriage class. Sometimes there are cultures where the family decision outweighs the decision in the marriage.
Yes.
And that is such a dangerous place to be.
Yes. And we grew up that way, right? I mean, we grew up where Hispanics, we all stay together, we all call each other. Like, I kept the chicken in there for 3 days. Should I eat it? And then we call the mother, and then we call the other sister, and then we make our decision.
But first they ask the husband, then they ask everybody else.
And there was a saying going around when we first got married.
But the husband says,
Yes.
throw it away.
Yes, yes. Because he would say, I'm going to answer this, but have you already called everybody? And I'm like, no. And then he's like, then it doesn't even matter what I say. You're going to call everyone.
That's right.
Why waste your time?
That's right.
So
That's all. So let's redirect it back towards the chapter. You know, it all, and you know, you're right. This is very important to read.
wow, that's on recording. They had 2 good recordings saved.
When you and your spouse reach the end of your time on earth, what will matter most will be the moments you served each other and the moments you served alongside each other. When we remove selfishness from our marriages, love will be all that remains. That's the kind of love that can change your marriage and change the world. This is why God has such a great classroom. Marriage is such a great classroom for the relationship we have with God. That is the kind of love that can change your marriage and change the world through your marriage. One of the questions that they have in the chapter is, who do you know? Just somebody tell me. Can you think of an example of a time when you were influenced by another married couple's commitment to be fruitful in the context that we're talking about? Anybody?
Yeah, I was taken under the wings of what I thought was an old couple, probably younger than me now, but they took several young people under their wing, had Bible study, had a touches me just to think about it. It was big,
Because they spent quality time with you to love on you.
big, big. Took us off the streets.
Yeah.
And her folks did that a lot too.
Yeah.
So having a purposeful, a naked purpose, which was to feed into others. Look at the legacy that they just created.
And it still moves you today. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that the life that you want to have? I mean, that's the life that we desire. And what happens is our everyday life and our everyday distractions gets in the way of showing up that way for people. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some times we hit it right on the head and we meet with somebody and we pour into them and they thank us and they love us and all that stuff. But there's lots of times that we get busy and the worst thing a human could do, and someone has approached me with this, and I'm growing in this area, is where we walk in a room where we're meant to love someone and take care of people, and they look at us and they see the energy around us and says they're too busy or they're unapproachable. It's the worst thing that we can do. It's like a sign on us saying, I don't care about you, I'm too busy, and you don't matter.
I'm too important.
And that's what we do in life with our spouses, with our children, or vice versa, with friends and family. But it's slowing down, and that's so hard for me because I've moved so fast to slow down, really slow down, and back up and say, how can I enjoy this moment? How can I enjoy this time? And who needs to be poured into, and who can I love? Because people don't care how much we know, how much I have. They don't care the name brand clothes I wear. They care what you just said, how you love me. You okay? And how you made me feel. It still brings you to tears on how they made you feel. And you even know they did it for several people. But just the fact that they did it for you and took time and what we pour into each other is the most important thing we could do. And with that being said, I remember when Jeff asked me that question, we went to Guatemala on our first missions trip with Lakewood, and we knew what we were walking into, and the stage was already
They
set.
prepped us. They prepped us what we were walking into.
They prepped us and prepped us. We're going to an orphanage. The next day you're going here. The next day you're going to feed kids here. You're going to go here. And I looked at this lady that was, her husband drove us around, took us everywhere, fed us, and did everything was so structured. And I asked, we were walking up a hill one day to get to the people because these people were so poor that they live on other people's land, so they're hiding. So you have to really go find them.
They're literally squatters on other people's land.
And we're walking in like the jungle and in the, all this. I mean, it's a hike. I mean, these men, as strong as they were, it was a hike for them.
We were sliding down the hillside trying to hike up.
And the kids knew we were coming. They were running down, excited. And I asked her, I said, how often do you do this? Like once a year, once a month? She goes, I do this every single day. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, she goes, it's nice having company. I'm like, you walk this? And she
Every day.
Every day. Every day. And
sometimes by herself?
Yeah, most of the time by herself. And then I would see the parents outside at the feeding clinic that she runs. And I said, her and her husband run it, and they have 3 children of their own. And she said, I said, why are the parents outside? Because you see like 2-year-olds feeding a 1-year-old. And she said, because we don't have enough food to feed the parents. We can only feed their children. And they bring them so they can eat, but they go home hungry. And I thought, we don't even do anything compared to this. And I thought those 2 people came to mind. Their marriage, they wake up every morning to say, who can we serve and save today? And to look at Jeff and think that I can wake up every morning and say, how can I serve you today? That's the highest form of love that we could show God. And for him to say that to me, we wake up
That's
thinking,
a naked purpose. That's
exactly.
A vulnerable purpose.
Because I get up and I'm like, oh, I need to be gone by 5. I need my juice. I need to do this. I need to get my cookies. I need to do this. It's like a million things. Instead of waking up and saying, how can I serve you today? Today we got it right. Because we slowed down and we didn't have a full schedule.
We did. So one of the questions is, what can you do differently to bring more fruitfulness into your life and marriage? They wrote in the book, so this is a little bit long. I'll try to read it as quickly as I can. Early in our marriage, we were running ragged, and we have some personal, Michelle and I have some personal, this relates very well to us and to some of the people we know. Early in our marriage, we were running ragged. We were trying to stay on top of our commitments while running our children around their different activities. It was exhausting. Finally, when we stopped to evaluate where we were as a couple and a family, we realized we weren't having family dinners together as often because we were always on the run. We felt disconnected as a family, and we knew we needed to prune some things. We decided that we were doing a lot of good things, but it wasn't good when we did them all at the same time. So we pruned our schedules by putting some of our activities on the shelf for a different season. We did this with our kids' schedules too, letting them pick one activity to be in at a time instead of multiple activities. And for us, with 4 boys, this made a huge difference for our schedule. As a family, find what works for your family and be willing to prune your schedule. This takes both spouses working together and not directing those shears at each other, but at your schedules instead. And I love this analogy that they use for pruning, because like with a vine, and I put that on your handout. Um, it says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit." That's John 15:1. And I love that. I love that in the simple fact that if you look at it as God is pruning us to do the work we were destined to do, to fulfill the destiny He has in store for us. There's times where we say, I got it, God. I don't need you to prune me. I don't need the shears. I got it. And when we do that, typically it doesn't end up the greatest. When we follow the Word, when we walk in the Word, especially when we do it together, and allow Him to prune us in the way that we're designed to be pruned, when Pastor Joel talks about stepping into the destiny God created for us, what a great place to be. What a great path to be on. What a great door to walk through. And to allow Him to prune those branches that we don't need and to take them off in the season that they need to be taken off in. And now you take that analogy into your own busy lifestyle, having a fruitful marriage, pruning those things that are not fruitful. And they may not be fruitful at this point in time. It doesn't mean you can't go back and that vine may have regrown in God's good time. But there's always, if you do that together, and like it said in the chapter, don't point the shears at each other and try to prune each other. Remember, that's God's job. That's not our job to say you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong.
And actually, that is whose job? Who does that? When we point fingers, well, when we say you're doing it wrong, it's the enemy. Because he's only here to accuse and, destroy, to kill, steal, and destroy and isolate us. And the thing I want to tell you is the reason we come to marriage class and the reason we come to Lakewood is because we get something from it. So I want you to build relationships. You've heard me say this over and over. Get each other's names and numbers, because we will need each other. We will need to call and say, hey, I've had an argument with Jeff. And Claudia, a godly Christian woman, she's going to be like, well, let's pray. Or if I want to talk bad about Jeff, which I once, thank God, is if I wanted to put him down or say stuff, she would be like, well, is that what God would want you to say? I need her to tell me that.
Or as an example, if you felt like you wanted to say all these bad things about me, having those type of relationships, that's staying together in the Word, that's supporting each other in the Word, and it gets out of our flesh, because our flesh wants to fight back.
Yeah.
Our flesh wants to be defensive.
Let me ask you, so hypothetical. What happens if you have a spouse that you see that's maybe going around the mountain again?
How can you serve them? How can you serve them during that journey?
So let's look at that. So you have a spouse that's going around the mountain. So we'll use Jeff and I as an example. I want to save everybody. Let's say Claudia is going to go out of town, and Luis doesn't want her to go, and she's going to save a sister or a brother, and I'm going to encourage her. Well, this isn't a bad situation. So, okay. So Claudia wants to go, and I'm a rescuer, so I want to go save her. And Jeff says, that's interesting because her husband doesn't want her to go. Now, here's what we talked about, that Claudia was not supposed to be saving her brothers and sisters. We had to trust God. And I go encourage her. What he can do for me is he can give me his advice and see, I think it's a bad choice, Michelle, that you're doing that, but I'm going to have to pray about it and ask God to talk to you because you're clearly not hearing me and Luis. Because he can only go to God and pray for him like I had to during the storm because I was not listening to him. I called Pastor Clayton and then I went to him. It's Pastor Clayton. So he knew his decision. You can only cover them in prayer. You're to tell them and you're to advise them, but ultimately all we can do is pray for them.
And the man's role in the marriage and the relationship is that of the shepherd. Not the dictator, not the ruler, but the shepherd. And just as a shepherd with his flock of sheep, he needs to have wise decisions and be caring about all. And to every decision should encompass the best of how he can care for the family, the flock, as a good shepherd.
And the thing that you guys have, that all of us have, is the word. Is going back to the word. If your spouse wants you to do something that is uncomfortable or unpleasing to you, like bring somebody in the bedroom, watch pornography with them, or do anything like that, your class was so good last week on that, 62%. That you go to the word and you say, yes, I'm supposed to be submissive to you, but does it show me where the word says I'm supposed to watch that with you? Show me where it says that I'm supposed to do that with you, because the word will not come back void, and it will not have the stuff in there that God's not telling you what to do with it. So we have to understand, like Louise said, submissiveness does not mean that the man says you're to be submissive to me. We'll wrap it up because I know we're going to end it a little bit.
Somebody wants to go get some seeds. It's cool to say it though, but I know it doesn't work.
It's cool to say.
To say to my wife, you gotta be submissive.
Yeah,
It's cool.
The thing is,
The problem it doesn't have.
Well, you can't say, like,
never works.
he could say, Claudia, you need to be submissive to me, and he gets to say really quick, like, I get to be submissive back to you. And then you get to say it. I mean,
If you're in the mood for a little of an argument, go ahead and try it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I forgot what I was going to say on that note.
Well, let's go ahead and wind it down.
Okay.
As we always suggest, the book is Naked Marriage.
We only have one more chapter. We'll Mike and Jen next week.
Right. Naked Marriage. There is a study guide at the back of the book for each chapter. Really, really good book. This has been a fantastic book for a lot of us. Highly recommend taking a look at it, going through it, reading the chapter so that you have the meat and potatoes, because we can only just cover just the real kind of bullet point.
And if you haven't joined Marriage Works on Facebook, join it, because we put all the videos on there.
Yep.
So you can share it with people too. Okay, can we end, or you go on? Father God, we just thank you for this word today, Father. We thank you for every married couple here. And we just thank you, Father, that you will help them be fruitful, Father. That you will help them look at each other and serve one another, love one another, bless one another, and bless your kingdom. We thank you, Father, that you have blessed us with a great spouse, Father, and that we won't look at the flaws or the brokenness, that we'll look at the love, the peace, the joy, and we will work on the areas that are displeasing to us and to you. We ask you, Father, that our tongue will be silent when we need to be silent. We'll be quick to listen, slow to speak, and always quick to love. In Jesus' name, amen.